flight ER521 to Dublin to board from gate number 11, thank you. Nous invitons à présent tous les passagers du vol Airbus I-521 destination de Dublin.
Chérie, t'es où?
Porte 11, merci.
Putain, qu'est-ce qu'elle fout encore?
Honey, why are you? What the hell is she doing? I can't see any other destination. Come on, hurry up.
Regarde.
Look,
On part dans 3 heures.
we're leaving in like 3 hours. But do you see it?
Regarde.
Yeah, look.
Arlon,
Arlon,
12h47.
it's 12:47.
9h.
Oh, it's only 9 a.m. It's okay, we have time.
Tu veux boire quelque chose?
Do you want to drink something?
Va me chercher une bouteille d'eau là-bas.
Yeah, can you please get me a bottle of water?
Plastique.
Plastic? Oh, come on, I don't care.
Non mais t'es sûr qu'on a besoin de tout
Are you sure that we need all of this just to go to Arlon in Belgium?
Je veux pas faire le tri
Well, I'm
dans les affaires qu'il y a dans ces valises.
not going to discuss about what we have in this suitcase, but yeah, but you said we had to take, all the clothes and for skiing, but at the same time we also need everything to go to the
La
beach.
dernière.
Yeah, but why? Because last time we went to Mesh in Luxembourg and we had bad weather, the holidays were hell, and you were complaining all the time. Yeah, okay, but I mean, we took like everything to go to the beach. Why?
Il va bien, hein, d'ailleurs, t'as vu?
Yeah, but I had sunscreen treatment, so I have to protect my skin, and so I need to keep the good color of my skin, Yeah, but come on, Luxembourg, 3 days. We're not gonna need this, and we took the skiing shoes, like for skiing. But what are we going to need that for? You never know.
Sauvage
They
là-bas.
told me that it was a little bit, like the wild countryside, that some things might be exotic. So,
Tiens, tu veux pas finir?
yeah, but when are we going to the Ardennes? Come on, finish your water.
Oh puis on s'en fout.
Oh shit! Oh come on, we don't care. We're going to have to wait for 3 hours.
Mobile.
Yeah, but I mean, we can't
Si on parle à
drive anymore. If we talk to people,
ça se fait pas trop.
they might think that we are bad people. We can't talk to people anymore.
Tout ça en
Yeah,
plus pour
but-
atterrir à Bruxelles.
I mean, we're going to land in Brussels.
Pour aller à Arlon, fallait passer.
Yeah, but to go to Arlon, we need to go through Brussels.
Le train, chargé comme on
Yeah,
est.
but then we're going to have to take the train. We have like so much luggage with us. It's like 3 hours, very long.
Ouais, ok.
Yeah, but you wanted to take all this stuff. What do you mean? What'd you say?
Tu pouvais prendre tes
You
affaires.
said that
mes affaires-
take all your stuff. That's what you said.
Oui, mais
Yeah,
d'habitude,
but this is my suitcase, like the small one.
ça change pas aujourd'hui.
Yeah, but usually you also prepare my suitcase. So I don't know why it should change now. So you know what?
Eh ben ce sera.
Arlon, it will be without me.
Tu appuies d'ailleurs. Je vois pas pourquoi je travaillerais tout ça.
I'm not going there, so I don't see why I should carry the suitcases.
On va y aller tout seul, quoi.
Okay, but I'm not going to go to Arlon alone.
Tu vas prendre ton.
You know what? You're going to take your dog, but it's going to be without me. I'm not going. Okay.
Vas-y, réponds, Médor.
Come on, Médor. Come on, Spike.
Oh, merde.
Pick up the phone. Oh, shit.
Chérie,
Honey,
chérie,
honey,
chérie.
honey. I'm sorry.
Oh, merde. J'ai un peu peur, moi tout seul.
I'm a little bit afraid here on my own.
J'avais pas vu le timing.
Mais non, mais c'était lui.
Moyen Gwen. Hello, everyone, and thank you to Louise and Fabien for this little sketch. I think They went through some things we can all recognize ourselves in: the stress of traveling, not being on time, having too much time, packing the wrong things. I don't know if you've ever packed skiing pants to go to Bali or something, but I think we've all packed wrong things sometimes. And on top of it all, we have to think about our impact as well. How can we be more sustainable? Should we take that next vacation? Well, if you've ever had that thought, you're not alone. Booking.com's recent sustainable travel report revealed that 4 out of 5 global travelers agree that sustainable travel is a priority for them. But is traveling sustainable even possible? And if so, how can we accomplish it? To guide us through this jungle of questions, I have the pleasure of welcoming Peigi Rodan, Sustainability Manager at Withlocals and host of a podcast on responsible traveling.
Let's see how this goes.
Thank you, Peigi. I also welcome Felipe Koch, professor at the University Paris-Est Créteil and sociologist of the imaginary. And last but not least, I hope we can welcome Ben Lynam as well, who will be joining us on Skype today. Hello, Ben. I can see you. I hope that you can see him as well. No?
Hello,
there
everyone.
He is. Hello, Ben. So Ben is head of communications at the Travel Foundation, an independent tourism organization working to unlock the positive potential of tourism. And yeah, as I said, Ben, you're joining us from the UK today online, replacing Elke, your colleague, who unfortunately, due to COVID, could not join us today. Thank you very much, Felipe, Peigi, and Ben. Thanks for joining me here in Luxembourg and to unpack this notion of can we actually travel sustainably. And before we do this and talk about something that we all love to do, I think we all love to explore and visit new places. You all brought an object with you. Peigi, you even biked on stage. Well done, you. So I'll start with you, Peigi. In a few words, what does travel symbolize for you through your object?
So I chose to bring this bike today. For me, travel really symbolizes freedom, and the bike really allows us to travel freely. There's nowhere really that a bike cannot go, apart from the water maybe. And yeah, it is free in terms of cost and also emissions. So I really believe that bike is the best way to travel.
Good. And you bike longer distances sometimes as well, not just a short while on stage?
A little bit longer on that, and not normally on an electric bike, road bike normally for me.
All right, thank you. Felipe, you have a globe in front of you. Tell us more.
Remind me of a time when I was a serial traveler and I wanted to do a collection of countries. That was like a time that has changed already. But for me, a couple of years ago, traveling was ticking places in a map.
Okay. And serial traveler, what does that mean?
The one that wants to collect a collectionnaire of places just to say, I've been there, or I visit this place, or this country, or this monument.
Mm-hmm. And what were some of the places you visited?
Plenty, like over than 70 countries. I did a round the world trip. So, but that has changed. We're going to talk about that.
We'll talk about that in a minute. Ben, last but not least, the suspense is killing me. A watch, okay. A clock more.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned that there was concepts of time were talked about in the previous sketch, and I think that's all part of traveling. It's the fact that you're on a different time zone, you have too much time, you have not enough time. Time can kind of almost slow down sometimes, and then speed up. And it's all about how you spend your time, and I think it's precious for us all.
All right. Thank you very much. Already very inspiring, and I'm looking forward to delve more into that. But before we continue, I would like to know from our audience, you should be seeing a Menti coming up soon. So I invite you to join the Mentimeter at menti.com with the code 1941230. And I already see there's some answers popping up here, which is really nice. So the question is, where did you travel last summer? And we see a nice collection of places here with a concentration of Europe, which is nice. This is not a trick question, by the way, just out of curiosity, no judgment. But I see, I mean, yeah, really mostly concentrated on Europe, but we have some North America, South America just popped up, Africa, Asia, even I think Greenland or Iceland up there in the north. Yeah, really nice. So I mean, we have a group here that likes to travel, which we most of us do, I think. So we'll explore together the challenges that this privilege brings with it to be able to get on a train or a bus or flight or a boat or I don't know what it could be. So Peigi, I'd like to ask you the first question. With everything going on and with climate change, but also the urge clearly to wanting to travel, but a growing awareness also of the need to act more sustainably. Globally, what's at stake here if we look at tourism and the travel sector?
Sure. So there's definitely a huge interconnectivity between tourism and climate change. Tourism is said to contribute around about 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So we have a part to play in climate change, but also tourism really relies on a healthy climate to be successful. Destinations, kind of beautiful landscape and healthy biodiversity, and also climate is its kind of natural capital, and it's really being put at risk with climate change. On top of that, the tourists' experience is being put at risk with climate change. I think we all saw in the south of Europe this summer the unbearable temperatures, making it really not necessarily a pleasant place to go and travel. And there was even forest fires that meant that travelers actually basically had their vacation ruined. This is all kind of relating to climate change. So definitely there is a lot of risks there. And as you mentioned as well, tourists do really want to travel more sustainably. You mentioned the Booking.com survey. There's been quite a lot out also by Trip.com and Skift, and they're all saying that travelers do really want to travel more sustainably. But we're also seeing that they can be quite price sensitive and not always willing to or able to pay the higher price. And it is sometimes the case there are higher prices when it comes to traveling more sustainably. We can see that people are still opting for flights and trains. And then on top of that, now there's kind of sustainable aviation fuels that are available, but not so much people are actually opting to pay the extra to travel with that. And one other topic that's actually being discussed a lot right now in tourism is over-tourism. So destinations are seeing kind of floods of people coming to the same place. And these tourists are not always high-quality tourists, meaning they can have more negative contributions than positive ones, depending on how they travel. So that's also a big topic right now, and kind of the want for people to maybe spread out to different, more unknown places would be a benefit as well.
Mm-hmm. And after COVID, I remember during COVID, literally flight traffic kind of died down, and there was a lot of talk about the relation between COVID and that. So what has shifted after COVID, actually? Do you see a shift there?
Yeah, there's definitely been a shift since COVID, I think, with a lot of people kind of locked up in their apartments in cities. We definitely see a growth in outdoor and adventure tourism, people really wanting to reconnect with nature. Another reason why it's very important to look after the nature we have. And also people are looking for really meaningful experiences. And I think we all realize after COVID what's really important for us. And those connections, connecting to nature and connecting to people, which is all possible through travel. So people really want to get out there and travel and see the importance of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, people want to get out there, that's clear. Over to you, Ben. At the Travel Foundation, you've been involved in multiple projects aimed at improving the impact of tourism, most recently through the report entitled Envisioning Tourism in 2030 and Beyond, the Changing Shape of Tourism in a Decarbonizing World. What can you tell us about this? What are the numbers saying? I mean, in how much trouble are we really?
Thanks. As Peigi said, at the moment, tourism is around about 8% of global global emissions. The main problem is that it's set to continue to grow. Again, Peigi mentioned over-tourism, but the growth in tourism generally is something that we've seen for many decades, and it will continue. That's basically due to population growth globally, as well as improvements in income and ease of travel and that sort of thing. So we know that tourism will increase, and there's not really much we can do about that unless we go for some really significant restrictions on liberty of movement and that sort of thing. So assuming that's not the path forward, then we need to look for alternatives, ways that we can grow tourism without growing those emissions. One of the more significant findings I think that we found from the report was that long haul travel in particular is a really high emitter, and this is obviously linked to aviation and flying. So at the moment, well, in 2019 at least, it was just around about 2% of the longest haul trips accounted for 20% of all tourism's emissions, not just in travel, all emissions. And that small subset is set to grow significantly. So it will then become 4% of all trips, and that would account for 40% of all emissions. So for us, it was absolutely critical that we try to tackle this particularly polluting and particularly hard to abate, as they call it, portion of tourism.
So, I mean, you talked a lot about going forward in the future, and through the report as well. What were some of the scenarios you explored? Because the report shows different scenarios that we could potentially approach if we want to achieve net zero by 2050. So does that mean, do we have to stop traveling altogether, or what are some of the scenarios that we're looking at?
So we took into account the fact that we believe that growth is part of what we have to try to accommodate. Growth in the number of people traveling. So we try to enable that to be possible in the future so that we can continue to travel. But we have to travel very differently, basically. So we found one scenario. We wanted to find many. We found one scenario because we've basically left it very late, and we now have to do everything. A bit like the UN is saying, we have to do everything everywhere all at once, and that's how we came up with the one scenario that we found that does allow this to happen. In sort of short, it means that we do need to get a handle on aviation growth. And that's mainly because at the moment, aviation is very difficult to decarbonize. There's only really one thing that is available to us at this precise moment, and that is so-called sustainable aviation fuels. So basically fossil fuel free jet fuel. And it's very, very limited. We're basically talking about 0.1% of all aviation fuel is currently sustainable aviation fuel. So there's no way we are going to be able to cover 100% of aviation by 2050 if we also allow aviation to grow and basically double in that time too. So we do need to hold back on that growth momentarily while we wait for other technologies like electric planes and hydrogen and all those sorts of things to come into play, but they are going to take a much longer time to come through. Other than that, it's all about electrification of transport and accommodation, using renewable energy, obviously, within that electrification. It's about moving people onto greener forms of tourism, so particular focus on longer trips by high-speed rail, but obviously all sorts of land and sea travel where electrification is more realistic sooner, and that does allow allow for the growth to happen. So growth occurs, people still travel, people still see the world, but we do it differently and with a particular focus on different types of transport and obviously different types of destinations that we will then be exploring.
So we're really looking at changing, essentially, the way we do travel, and we'll get back to that in a minute, Felipe. Ben, you also were part of developing the Glasgow Declaration on Climate Action in Tourism, launched by the UN World Tourism Organization at COP26 in Glasgow. Can you tell us a bit more about this? What's the importance of such a declaration, essentially, moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's more than a declaration in a sense because it commits organizations to show a climate action plan for their organization and then update it yearly with their progress status and have that freely available. It's really trying to encourage tourism to speed up and catch up with other sectors really as well, to be honest. I think tourism has been a bit of a laggard in this area, save a few notable exceptions. I think the other crucial part of it is to try to encourage greater collaboration to change the way that the system works currently. I know that we're going to hear more in this discussion about what individuals can do, and that is hugely important, the choices that individuals and consumers make. But equally, I think our focus needs to be on the system itself and making sure that that changes, systems change. At the moment, it's ridiculous, basically, that it's easier to fly somewhere and it's cheaper to fly somewhere than it is to find alternative forms of transport, and there's all the issues that are kind of caught up in that in terms of you can't book rail journeys a year in advance, you can't book trips that are multimodal to allow people to get to where they actually need to be in a sort of seamless and smooth way. All of these things are huge opportunities for tourism, huge opportunities for investment, and they will be a return on that investment. As I say, there's actually a bright future for tourism here for those people who can see where the future is headed, because we are headed in this direction, either kicking and screaming or willingly. But we do need to be much better at coordinating our response. We need to start to bring in the emissions from international transport, which madly are not part of kind of national carbon budgets at the moment. No, they're not part of the Paris Agreement. So that's why there's all these weird perverse incentives for people to keep growing tourism without necessarily thinking about the decisions they're making and making the necessary trade-offs of actually, do we want to continue to expose ourselves to this fossil fuel dependent industry, or can we start to move and grow in a different way, a cleverer way that's going to get us where we all need to be for the sake of the planet?
Thank you, Ben. So things are happening, but it's slow, although it needs to speed up. And it's not all on individual shoulders, but it's also in the system that changes need to happen. So we've looked at some industry solutions and changes, and we'll start looking at individual trends in a minute. But I would like to know from our audience once again, if you could please connect once more to menti.com, what actions would you be prepared to take to travel more sustainably? All right, so we see big focus on train here, bike as well. Peigi, you're inspired some action maybe. Stay close to home, travel more locally, yeah. I see stop flying as well. So it's stop flying, not reduce flying. Local, yeah, electric cars. Yeah, but really the focus seems to be on train, bike, Europe even, okay. Interesting. So I see you've been inspired. Ben, I don't know if you can see the Menti, but what does this make you feel seeing these answers? Does it make you hopeful or?
Yeah, very hopeful. It's wonderful to see. I'm slightly concerned that the people in the room may be ever so slightly predisposed to more sustainable thinking. I think the real challenge will be when it comes to the sort of what you would call mainstream or mass tourism, encouraging that to happen in a way that where where price and convenience are going to be much more important for people, and we just need to make sure that the system tells you that it's cheaper and easier to take the sustainable option. But I love all of those suggestions that I saw in that cloud then. They're absolutely bang on. So hooray, well done, audience.
Thank you, Ben, for those words of encouragement. All right, Peigi, back to you. So is a different way of travel actually possible also on an individual level? I mean, words like sustainable, regenerative, and then traveling, tourism, are those words that we can and should be using in the same sentence in regards to especially the environmental impacts that we've seen and that are really undeniable? And what would be some other ways of organizing tourism that are less damaging to the environment and instead could be regenerative?
Yeah, so looking at some of the individual ways that we can travel more sustainably in terms of the environment, I think it's quite clear that a lot of people already know some of the answers from the Mentimeters and also what Ben spoke about. Flying less is really the biggest win that we can have, and flying less far as well, and going with train. I think those things are really powerful. Aside from that, we can also look at other ways of transportation in tourism. For example, some travel experiences have transportation just for the sake of transport. So for example, at Withlocals, the company that I'm working with, we took all experiences offline that have transportation as the experience itself. So things like dune buggies or, like private helicopter or plane ride to get to see somewhere. These are all part of kind of entertainment, but we really need to look at and think, okay, let's not use emissions unless we really have to, and to use them for fun is a bit crazy nowadays. Mm-hmm. And then we can also look at things in terms of biodiversity in the environment, kind of tourism experiences that get up close and personal to animals, or kind of elephant riding and this type of thing. Mm-hmm. I would say that should really be a thing of the past, and we really need to look at how we can respect nature and biodiversity. On top of that, speaking of biodiversity, actually tourism is a huge contributor to actually protecting natural biodiversity. So if you think about all the national parks and everything that are really saved and protected, tourism is really funding that. And if you can imagine that people would just stop traveling and stop visiting those areas, the money would stop coming in, and those might be used for other means, for example, farming and things, and the animals and the biodiversity wouldn't be protected. So I think as a traveler, you can look at ways to still visit these natural areas and support them, and of course respect them. And it's not always about kind of direct economic benefits, as in paying for national park. Also, where I'm from in Scotland, which I think a lot of people know, it's quite famous for our natural biodiversity. There is actually no entrance fees in Scotland to visit any of this natural area, but we know that people are coming to enjoy the beautiful scenery, so the government is really motivated to keep it that way and make sure that we protect our land. And I actually have one example, one of the islands off Scotland, the Isle of Mull, they reintroduced white-tailed eagles, and that's said to have contributed 5 million economically to Scotland, and also created 100 jobs. So there's really like a connect here between people visiting natural areas and it funding it and helping to protect it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the great example as well. And if we look at the social aspect, you touched a bit upon it with Withlocals, the organization that you're working from. Could you tell us some more about how you work and your work at Withlocals?
Sure. So Withlocals actually focuses a little bit more on the social aspects of tourism, because our impacts are actually so low in terms of environmental. We don't have any flights or anything like that. We're a platform that offers local experiences, primarily through walking tours. And tourism actually has a huge opportunity to kind of provide wealth to more areas and contribute it more equally when travelers kind of from the west go to the east and so on. But tourism also has a dark secret, and that is called tourism leakage. So that's when the travelers' money doesn't stay in the local economy. And this problem can be really quite big. For example, in the Caribbean, it's said to be around 80%. So that's 80% of travelers' money coming out of the Caribbean. In Thailand, it's said to be 70%, and in kind of small island developing destinations, around 50%. So a lot of the time, tourism can bring a lot of the negative impacts, over-tourism, a lot of people coming there, and they're not even being able to have an advantage with the money. It's going back out into richer countries, and things like cruise ships and all-inclusives are kind of where this is happening a lot, and they don't necessarily make an effort for local partnerships. So with locals, going back to with locals, we're really working to make sure that the locals are being empowered through tourism, and basically we're a platform that advertises local hosts and their experiences to global travelers, and we also really want to empower more businesses through our experiences in local businesses. So for example, food tours are kind of the most popular kind of tours on the platform, and we have partnerships with loads of local restaurants and businesses, so the money is really staying in the local economy in this way. And on top of that, I think what people can think about is it's very overwhelming of choosing what kind of things to buy, and I do think that certifications can actually be really helpful to know what kind of tourist experience or provider you want to buy off of. Things like B Corp is kind of very respected, and that kind of makes things easier in terms of choices. And I also think, as Ben mentioned, the Glasgow Declaration and companies having climate action plans and impact reports, I think looking out for companies like that are very transparent on their impacts, both positive and negatives, is a really kind of good first step on what kind of company you want to choose to spend your money with when traveling.
So there is support from companies that are actually working towards this more regenerative way of traveling. But on an individual level, so Felipe, I think that the question that we might be asking ourselves is, what can we actually do within ourselves to also work towards that more regenerative travel mode? And so, Felipe, you're a sociologist of the imaginary, and I'm really curious to know what that entails, and what does the imagination have to do with traveling? And we also touched upon the notion of slow travel a bit, so I assume that has something to do with each other. So
I think what we actually need are new imaginaries. And when I talk about imaginaries, I'm not talking about imagination, I'm not talking about fantasy. The imaginary are anthropological structures. They're linked to the human being, and they present themselves like narratives, these stories that make sense for us, to help us to make sense of the world. And we adhere to them, even if they are not true sometimes, and we cannot make an imaginary. An imaginary is created by society, and it takes time for doing that. But I also think that we are now in a kind of shifting of imaginaries. Maybe we are leaving this time-focused imaginary that governed the 20th century, where we had this endless line, or the imaginary of progress, that you could go to the infinite of the time. And you are moving to a more let's say, space-oriented imaginary, where we are more aware of our impact on Earth, we are more aware of its limits. And those imaginaries, we can translate that into tourism. For example, this time or accumulation imaginary would be the serial traveler that I just spoke about, the person who's wants to do countries. I've done this country, and have like the image. It could be the pinned globe or the full stamped passport that image of, look how many countries I've been to. And I think the new imaginary that is coming up would be the slow traveler, the one that relates to the space more deeply.
And how did you manage to do this shift? Because you said that you, once upon a time, were a serial traveler. And what made you kind of change your perspective and wanting to go towards more slower ways of traveling?
I realized that when I start paying attention in the in-between, when I was going to some place, and instead of focusing on the destination, taking the flight straight there, I start to look which would be the path until there. And then from there, I start developing, and this helps to create new imaginaries. I start to develop a sense of place. And sense of place is a very sensitive activity, because you start to engage with people more fully. We start to moving from an idea of identity to identification. I identify myself with this way of living, even though we are still tourists. But it's a way of living that I try to adopt while traveling. That's why doing less but longer would be a good way of nurturing those new imaginaries. Because in this way we create a sort of roots, but they are temporary and they are horizontal, because they come from our experience to this space we're more aware of. And I think also this shift in imaginary can be very empowering, because we are going to be moving from this image of the modern individual with those fixed categories, that the profession, the place of living, the gender, the marital status, all those things. We're moving to more a postmodern person, and it's a more fluid concept. This person can experience many lives, and those many lives come from these little routines that you do while traveling. It creates a kind of patchwork of your life story. And I think this is very empowering when you can live many lives during a lifespan. And I think slow travel, it's about that.
Mm-hmm. So really purposeful travel. And Peigi, is this something that at Withlocals you also, would sign off on, that you try to give travelers a sense of purpose to go on vacation, to really have a purpose when they travel?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that another thing is really connecting with where you're going, and not kind of like going somewhere quickly just for the photo into the next place without engaging with it. And we're all about really engaging and understanding that local culture and the people, and feeling a part of it and learning from it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much to Peigi, Ben, and Felipe. I think we've really covered a large part throughout our discussion. So we saw the industry impact that traveling has over to some changes and solutions that are happening on industry level, but also on the individual level. But with this being said, we also discussed the importance of travel that it has actually in the economies, but also for ourselves to find a purpose and to extend our boundaries and to explore new horizons. So there are benefits to immersing ourselves in different landscapes and other cultures, and we shouldn't stop doing that. We'll turn to the audience one last time, and I'd like to invite you once more to connect to menti.com and to share with us what are your key takeaways from this session today. What do you take away from this discussion with our panelists? So the code is still the same, 1941-230. All right, purpose. Immerse yourself, inspiring. Slow travel, local travel. And a sense of responsibility as well. I think that we all, we're part of this, and we all have a responsibility to contribute to being more regenerative and thinking about what we do. But I think slow travel seems to be the key word here. Peigi, looking at the answers, what do you think about the answers?
I think there's a lot of great things there. I think the one for me, and maybe I'm a bit biased because I'm working it with locals, but the word local, I think, has a lot of meaning to it in terms of trying to travel less further afield, more locally, engaging with the locals and making sure you spend your money locally and it stays local as much as possible. So I think for me, although it's a little bit smaller than slow travel, it's popping out a bit more for me.
I think it's second one, so you're good. Ben, what about you? Which is your favorite answer, or what speaks to you?
Well, I'll go with slow travel. I just think that we need to be mindful about how we see slow travel in the wider world, I guess. I think for some people that means something romantic and wonderful and deep. For others, that will just be an inconvenience. And so I think we need to be thinking about the fact that we can produce new products that are multi-destination, that are less hassle in terms of the horribleness of going to an airport, and that ease you into a destination well, and all those sorts of things. And then I think we can really sort of see the benefits of that. Otherwise, I mean, I'm a fan of slow travel, but I'm just aware of how it might appear to others when we talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Felipe, what about you? Which is your answer of choice?
For me, it would be, I saw there change the imaginary, new imaginaries, maybe nurture imaginaries, moving from this image of the Hermes god to Gaia, to a more embracing way of traveling.
Mm. Thank you for that philosophical wrap-up of this panel discussion. Thank you very much, Felipe, Peigi, and Ben, for joining me here today. And big round of applause, I think, too.
On se retrouve donc pour un petit éclairage.
Well, here we are again. We've been talking about tourism and traveling.
Du point de vue de l'eau, c'est quels sont...
Now, in terms of water, what does it mean? Well, the first destination I'm thinking of is the islands, right? Islands are territories with hydro systems that are very fragile and very limited. So we can see that most of them actually have to use a system that will allow for drinking water and not seawater, but that works with fossil fuel. And that actually further increases climate change. We also have what is happening on the coast. We've got fragile ecosystems, but we also have the sea that comes up, and we also have in the groundwater table, because you pump so much water, you've got salty water that comes in the groundwater table. So that can be a problem for the population in France or in Europe. We are being faced with that kind of phenomenon. So last summer in Greece, when it was awfully dry with all those fires, we had those rains with 200 millimeters of rain on an hourly basis. So you go from drought to flooding in a few hours. And it's not at the end of the world. It's Greece. It's pretty close. So the water cycle is being actually deteriorated everywhere. And we've got to be aware of that. So, yes, there should be limits in where you can go. I lived in Annecy, in a mountain, for 7 years, and you've got lots of ski resorts that try to regenerate themselves. And it's the same. What about artificial snow, for example, for ski resorts? Just to give you an idea, we need 4,000 cubic meters per hectare of snow. If you're talking about the Alps, it's between 20 and 25 million of cubic meters. That's the equivalent of drinking water needs for a city of 200,000 inhabitants a year. So we need water for a lot of things. Hence the question about the climate model for those ski resorts, whether they are higher up or not. Yes, if you got a heat wave, you become very aware of what water means. But in the winter, ski resorts, yes, it's a bit puzzling when you think that, and you make the link with water. Yes, whether it's in the winter or in the summer, the water issue is or should be on everybody's mind, and the stakeholders on various territories are working hard on this. Thank you, Charlène, for this, for shedding some light on this issue. We will have a 25-minute break now, and then we will move to two other aspects of our life: the impact of our clothing and the impact of what we eat. That will be behind your style and behind your food. So enjoy the break, and don't hesitate. We've got a lounge outside where you can meet with our teams of the Pickup and the Sustainability Academy. And I'll see you at 3:15. See you soon.